The ambient hum of a busy upscale hotel lobby disappeared, the moment the front desk clerk's voice cut across the polished marble floor like a blade. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside. This check-in line is for Pinnacle Elite members only. The woman being addressed had not moved out of anyone's way. She stood perfectly still at the counter, her carry-on positioned neatly beside her left heel, her posture so precise and unhurried that it looked less like patience and more like a deliberate choice to remain exactly where she was. She was wearing a deep burgundy blazer over a white blouse, her natural hair pulled back in a clean, structured bun. She did not look like someone who had just flown 11 hours from Stuttgart, Germany, though she had. Her name was Colonel Naomi Ashford-Pierce, United States Army. She commanded a forward logistics battalion and had, 2 weeks prior, received a commendation from the Secretary of Defense for coordinating emergency supply operations during a multinational crisis exercise in Eastern Europe. She was 44 years old, had been in uniform since she was 22, and had not once in those 22 years failed to accomplish a mission she had been assigned. Tonight's mission was straightforward: check into the Meridian Grand Hotel in downtown Atlanta, sleep, and deliver the opening keynote address at the Army Logistics Leadership Summit the following morning. The clerk who had just spoken to her was named Trent Malloy. He was 26, 9 months into his job, and possessed the particular brand of misplaced confidence that flourishes in people who have been given a small amount of authority and no real wisdom to accompany it. He had a practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes, and the way he looked at Naomi when she approached the counter carried the unmistakable weight of a snap judgment that had already been made before she opened her mouth. "I'm sorry," Naomi said, her voice calm and even, the voice of a woman who briefed generals. "Could you repeat that?" "This lane," Malloy said, gesturing to the small placard on the counter with the deliberate slowness of someone explaining something to a child, "is reserved for our Pinnacle Elite tier guests, highest loyalty level. You'd need to use the general check-in terminals over there." He pointed toward a row of kiosks along the far wall, where a line of approximately 12 people waited. Naomi looked at the kiosks. She looked back at Malloy. She placed her reservation confirmation on the counter. "I have a reservation, Naomi Ashford-Pierce, Suite 1412. Malloy glanced at the paper without picking it up. "I can see that, ma'am, but the suite tier doesn't automatically qualify you for this lane. Pinnacle Elite is a separate membership enrollment. If you haven't registered, pull up my profile," Naomi said. Something about the quietness of the instruction made Malloy hesitate. It wasn't a request. It wasn't aggressive. It was the kind of statement that assumed compliance the way gravity assumed objects would fall. He turned to his screen, typed her name, and the system opened her profile. He stared at it for a moment longer than was necessary. Naomi Ashford-Pierce. Pinnacle Elite member since 2019. Lifetime points balance, 847,000. Government and military premium rate. Complimentary upgrade flagged. Malloy's jaw moved slightly. He looked up at her, then back at the screen, and something unfortunate happened. Instead of simply proceeding, instead of offering an apology and a keycard with a professional smile, he felt the small, hot flare of embarrassment transform into a doubling down. "There may be a discrepancy in the system," he said, his voice taking on a faintly bureaucratic clip. "I'm going to need to verify this with my shift supervisor before I can process a suite at this level. If you wouldn't mind waiting over at the seating area." "I would mind," Naomi said simply. The couple checking in at the adjacent counter stopped talking. A porter, who had been rolling a luggage cart toward the elevator bay, slowed his pace almost imperceptibly. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration." "I'm not frustrated," Naomi said. And the remarkable thing was that she wasn't. Her expression was the same controlled neutrality when coordinating triage decisions at 2 a.m. in a forward operating base with limited communications and 6 moving parts. "I'm telling you that your system is displaying my Pinnacle Elite status clearly, that my reservation is confirmed, and that I've been standing at your counter for 4 minutes. What I'd like to understand is what specific discrepancy you're referencing." Malloy's ears went slightly red. "It's a system verification process. Standard protocol. Is this protocol applied to every guest whose profile displays Pinnacle Elite status?" Silence. The couple at the next counter had given up any pretense of not listening. "Or," Naomi continued, her voice dropping slightly, becoming very still and very clear. Molloy opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked over her shoulder, perhaps hoping someone would interrupt. Someone would save him from the corner he was rapidly constructing around himself. What he found instead, when he looked past Naomi toward the lobby entrance, was a sight that made the blood leave his face with such efficiency it was almost impressive. Coming through the revolving doors of the Meridian Grand, still wearing his dress uniform, was General Marcus Thibodeau, the commanding general of United States Army Forces Command. He was accompanied by 2 aides and a woman from the hotel's executive team, who had clearly been waiting for him at the entrance. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, with a chest decorations and the particular bearing of someone who had long ago stopped being impressed by rooms, regardless of how expensive they were. He was also unmistakably walking directly toward the front desk. He spotted Naomi before he reached the counter, and his stride didn't change, but something in his expression did, the slight professional tension of a superior recognizing that something was wrong. "Colonel Ashford-Pierce," he said, coming to stand beside her. Not behind her, beside her, equal footing. "I wasn't aware you'd arrived yet. I was going to find you at dinner." He looked at the counter. He looked at Molloy. "Is there a problem?" Molloy's mouth opened and produced no sound for a full second and a half. "The clerks," Naomi said pleasantly, "was explaining that there's a discrepancy in the system regarding my Pinnacle Elite status." General Thibodeau turned his full attention to Molloy. He didn't raise his voice. Men who have spent decades in actual command rarely need to. "What's your name, son?" "Trent Molloy, sir." "Mr. Molloy." The general's voice was conversational. Entirely, disturbingly conversational. "Colonel Ashford-Pierce is the keynote speaker at a United States Army event, taking place in this hotel beginning tomorrow morning. She has been a Pinnacle Elite member of your loyalty program for 6 years. Her suite reservation was confirmed by your hotel's event coordination office 3 weeks ago, and again 4 days ago." He paused. "What exactly is the discrepancy?" Molloy's hands were motionless above his keyboard. His practiced smile had dissolved entirely. I think I misread the screen, sir. I apologize." "I'd like you to look at it again," Thibodeau said, "carefully, and then I'd like you to check Colonel Ashford-Pierce in, provide her with a room upgrade if one is available, and explain to me why a decorated officer of the United States Army was asked to wait in a seating area after 4 minutes at an empty elite counter." The lobby was very quiet. Molloy pulled up the screen. His fingers, for the first time all evening, moved quickly. "Suite 1412, Pinnacle Elite confirmed. Complimentary upgrade to the Meridian Suite on the 14th floor." He produced 2 key cards. He placed them on the counter with both hands. "Colonel Ashford-Pierce," he said, his voice stripped of everything except the hollow performance of professionalism. "I sincerely apologize for the confusion. You're confirmed in the Meridian Suite. The elevator is to your right. Is there anything else I can do for you this evening?" Naomi picked up the key cards. She looked at Molloy for a moment with the same expression she used when a subordinate had made an error that was correctable but would not be forgotten. "No," she said. "Thank you." She turned to General Thibodeau. "Thank you, sir. I'll see you at the dinner briefing. 073, he said, and offered a slight nod that carried more respect in it than anything Molloy had witnessed in his 9 months on the job. Naomi walked toward the elevator without looking back. What happened next happened quickly, in the way that institutional accountability tends to move when a senior enough person is in the room to witness the failure firsthand. General Thibodeau did not follow Naomi to the elevator. He remained at the counter. He looked at Molloy with the patience of a man who has all the time in the world and is about to use every minute of it. "Is your general manager available this evening?" he asked. The general manager's name was Patricia Hollenbeck, and she was available. She appeared from the back office within 90 seconds of being paged, a compact woman in a charcoal blazer with the alert, slightly apprehensive energy of someone who understood that a 4-star general standing at her front desk at 9:30 on a Tuesday evening was not routine. "General Thibodeau," she said, extending her hand, "we're honored to have you. Is there something I can assist with?" "There is," he said. He gave her a concise, factual account of what he had witnessed. No embellishment, no performative outrage, just the sequence of events, delivered with the same precise clarity he would use to brief a congressional committee. He described the redirection to the kiosk line, the fabricated system discrepancy, the request that a Pinnacle Elite member wait in the seating area, the 4 minutes Colonel Ashford-Pierce had spent at an empty priority counter before he arrived. Hollenbeck listened without interrupting. Her face moved through several distinct stages of comprehension. "I understand," she said when he had finished. "I will address this tonight." "I'd appreciate that," Thibodeau said. "Colonel Ashford-Pierce is representing the United States Army at this summit. She, and every other military guest at this event, will be treated with the full respect of her rank and her status with your establishment. If that's not something this hotel can guarantee, the Army's event coordinator will need to know before 7 o'clock tomorrow morning so that we can begin exploring alternative arrangements." It was not a threat. It was a statement of operational logistics, delivered without heat. It was, somehow, much more effective than a threat. "Absolutely, General," Hollenbeck said. "You have my personal guarantee." Thibodeau thanked her, collected his room keys from a different clerk at the far end of the counter, and took the elevator upstairs. Hollenbeck turned to Malloy. The account of what was said between them in the next 12 minutes was later described by a colleague who was present as the quietest, most devastating professional conversation she had ever witnessed. Hollenbeck did not yell. She was not theatrical. She simply pulled up Malloy's call record on the hotel's internal system, and then pulled up the Meridian Grand's hospitality code of conduct, and then asked Malloy to walk her through, step by step, the reasoning that led him to redirect a confirmed Pinnacle Elite Suite guest to the kiosk terminals. He couldn't do it. There was no reasoning that survived contact with his own words when they were repeated back to him. By 10:15, Malloy had been relieved of his shift. By 10:40, after Hollenbeck reviewed the security footage from the lobby desk, the hotel's HR director had been contacted at home. By 7 the next morning, Trent Malloy had been placed on administrative suspension, pending a formal discrimination review. He did not return to work at the Meridian Grand. Naomi Ashford-Pierce, for her part, slept well. The Meridian suite was on the corner of the 14th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Atlanta skyline. She set her alarm for 5:30, did 40 minutes of PT in the fitness center before the breakfast crowd arrived, and sat down with her keynote notes over black coffee in the empty restaurant at 6:45. At 8 o'clock the following morning, she walked into the grand ballroom of the Meridian Grand in her Army service uniform and stood at the podium in front of 260 logistics officers, government contractors, and military leadership personnel. The introduction given by General Thibodeau lasted 4 minutes and covered, in precise detail, the scope of her career. 2 combat deployments, 3 overseas assignments, a master's degree in systems engineering from Georgia Tech, the Army Commendation Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Legion of Merit. A commanding officer whose soldiers, by documented survey, reported the highest unit morale scores in her brigade. The room was attentive in the way audiences become attentive when they understand they are in the presence of someone whose accomplishments are not ceremonial. Naomi spoke for 48 minutes. She spoke about the invisible architecture of military logistics, the supply chains that kept soldiers alive and missions viable, the leadership philosophy she had built, over 2 decades of learning what it actually meant to serve. She did not mention the night before. She did not need to. Her presence in that room was its own answer to every assumption that had been made at the front desk. When she finished, the applause began, before she had fully stepped back from the podium. She wasn't thinking about Trent Malloy. She was already thinking about the next session. But Trent Malloy, sitting at home in Decatur that morning, watching a local news segment that ran a brief feature on the Army summit at the Meridian Grand, was very much thinking about her. The segment included a 10-second clip of the standing ovation at the end of her keynote. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Naomi Ashford-Pierce, U.S. Army Logistics Command, Summit Keynote Speaker." He recognized her immediately. He sat with that recognition for a long time. Several days after the summit concluded, a formal complaint was filed with the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, citing the incident at the Meridian Grand front desk as a potential violation of the state's public accommodation statutes. The complaint was filed not by Naomi Ashford-Pierce, who was by that point back at her duty station in Fort Bragg, preparing for an overseas readiness review, but by General Thibodeau's aide-de-camp, acting on standing instructions from the General's office that civil rights incidents observed in connection with Army events be formally documented through the appropriate civilian channels. The Meridian Grand's parent corporation issued a statement 7 days later. The statement included an apology, a commitment to enhance staff training on hospitality equity, and a contribution to a military family support organization based in Atlanta. Trent Malloy's employment with the company was listed in the HR review documentation as terminated due to conduct inconsistent with company values. He had been on the job 9 months. His professional reference file now carried a discrimination review, finding that would follow him for considerably longer. None of that was Naomi's doing. She had not made a single phone call, filed a single complaint, or said a single word publicly about what had happened. She hadn't needed to. The system, when placed in contact with a woman of her caliber and the general who stood beside her, had corrected itself with the same cold efficiency a body deploys when expelling something that doesn't belong. There is a particular kind of blindness that mistake takes, the kind that looks at a black woman in a burgundy blazer and sees someone who can be redirected, inconvenienced, managed. It is a blindness that has survived in pockets of American life for a long time, fed by the assumption that certain people will absorb a small humiliation quietly and move on, that there is no cost to the person delivering it. Trent Malloy discovered, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday night in Atlanta, that the assumption has a point of failure, that the woman he had looked at and decided did not belong was the same woman a 4-star general crossed a lobby to stand beside, that the guest he had tried to send to the kiosk line had a chest full of medals and a ballroom full of people who rose to their feet when she finished speaking. He had not seen any of that when he looked at her. He had seen what his assumptions let him see, and nothing more. That is the most dangerous kind of mistake a person can make. Not the kind born from malice alone, but the kind born from a certainty so deeply embedded it doesn't even recognize itself as a choice. Colonel Naomi Ashford-Pierce did not need a lobby clerk's validation. She did not need his lane, his apology, or his revised opinion of her. She needed a key card and 6 hours of sleep before she went to work. She got all three. The scales always find their level. Sometimes it just takes a general walking through the door. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever stood your ground in a room that tried to make you feel like you didn't belong, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit the like button, subscribe to Voices of Truth, and ring that notification bell. We'll be here with the next one.